Hey kids, it's Jurassic James. It's Jurassic Explains. Looking at Styxosaurus. So there's only, as far as I know, there's only a Jurassic World model of this. I saw it in Target, I say 6 months ago. I think it was $25, $30, and I just waited and I waited and I waited, and it turns out I found it at DD's discount store for $10.99. So again, I wanted to show you how I'm able to do all of this, and because many of you have commented or said online, like, I wish I had your collection, or like this is, I did it. I hunt and I wait. So, Styxosaurus, what's going on here? It's only one model, and we will start by opening it with the official scissors of Jurassic James. And so, let's see. And that's it. So, Styxosaurus is a late Cretaceous plesiosaur from the Campanian epoch. And so basically it lived in the second to last time of the Cretaceous period. Now, one thing to point out is that, and I mentioned it before, Lake Cretaceous, North America, there is a giant inland sea, meaning that if you've ever driven from North Texas to Oklahoma, Nebraska, Dakotas, South North Dakota, you'll notice that for the most part in the middle, the Great Plains is very flat. There's a lot of limestone there. That is an example of this Great Western Interior Seaway, very big American name. And the idea here was that this ocean, the Gulf, went as far in as that, and so that's why on the I guess western side, if you're driving north, the left side, there's mountains in Colorado and Wyoming, and on the eastern side, you see more like plains, and it gets to like the Appalachian Mountains core. And so what's going on is that it's weird because you're in the middle of like Kansas, and you're finding like where he's from, Logan County, Kansas, and you're one of them has been found there. And you find marine reptiles. And so that's really neat to point out that this shows you that the environment has once changed. Now, with Styxosaurus itself, the name Styx is named after the river Styx, which is from Greek mythology, the river, or that leads to it's between the living world and the underworld. And a very famous example of this is that you give the ferryman, the boatman, skeleton guy in a cloak, a coin or something, and he'll take you across. You've seen in many movies. So, of course, a cool name, a scientific name, a nerdy name. One thing to point out with this particular guy is that it is a close relative, and this is actually fitting that the Jurassic World figure looks like the Styxosaurus figure. It's the same mold. Yeah, the difference is they're very close relatives, actually. Within the plesiosaur, I don't go over so much detail. I'll do more dinosaurs, but for marine reptiles, within the plesiosaur world, there's a lot of different branches, and they're closer to each other than most other plesiosaurs. And so one thing to point out, too, is I have the Jurassic World plesiosaurs here as well, and they're not exactly the scale, but this is a relative scale. Then when you think of Plesiosaurus, the genus that's really, really famous, that is from the Jurassic period, I think early to middle Jurassic period. The Styxosaurus, like Styxosaurus, is late Cretaceous. This guy found like in Europe. These guys are found in America. And so the idea is that they got bigger over time, right? And one thing I want to point out with these guys is that they're with this one in particular, they found in Styxosaurus a lot of gastroliths. So gastro means stomach, and lith means stone. So we found rocks in the stomach. So where humans will chew our food and swallow it, these animals eat their food whole, and they have stones in their stomach to grind the food up. That's what the main assumption is or understanding. Crocodiles today use gastroliths too to help them like buoyancy in water, but it's been estimated that the stones in the animals that was found with the skeleton, like in the skeleton, were about 1% of the weight of the animal. So that's not enough to pull it down or help it balance. That alone, plesiosaurs are exceptional swimmers. It's really neat is that they're like footballs with flippers. They can flip around like this and move really fast. And one of the reasons we see, now the Jurassic World toys don't really show this, but usually you see many plesiosaurs, the eyes kind of face upwards. And there's this thing called countershading. And what we see in like the great white shark is that the back is like gray or dark black, or kind of, the belly's white. If you're an upper part of the water column, you look down, you see a black abyss, and the shark's back blends in. If you're looking up at the sunlight, there's a bright white light, and then you see the shark's yellow, the white belly, and it fits in as well. And so that's one way, because we know great whites, and will come up from below to attack seals, right? The idea here that plesiosaurs, we think they're hunting fish and squid, and the idea is that we think the stones were there to help grind the food up, because if the toy shows it really well, actually, the teeth are a little bit too big, but they are pretty big. I think for the toy gimmick, you go down like that. Oh, that's really cool, because this guy only, if I remember correctly, oh no, he doesn't do any of those things. You push a button, it goes down. You push this button, it does that. This one, the box was like, it did say on several parts. Like control the action, exclamation mark. So I think they're saying how you can do more, like it can flip like this and do that and do this. These guys are just on their own. And so anyway, as far as this little row here, there's nothing in the skeleton that imply this long row. But again, I with dinosaurs on land, I mentioned that in the Hypsilophodon video, that these guys have feathers. The dinosaurs, some of them have feathers or structures that we look at the basic skeleton and imagine all the extra plumage. For marine reptiles, we're not sure, because you wouldn't want a whole lot of extra plumage because you're in the water, you're trying to be fast, and especially for plesiosaurs who are specifically trying to be as fast as possible. And so the one thing I will say as far as the fact that they reuse this mold is that the nose, the snout should be more blunt. If you look at the skull of this animal, it was the first remains of what we now call Styxosaurus were discovered in 1890-ish, around that time. The animal, the genus wasn't named until 1943 by Samuel Paul Wells, who was the same guy who named Shoshonesaurus, a giant marine ichthyosaur, and more famously, Dilophosaurus, the quote spitter from Jurassic Park that didn't really spit. So the same guy named Styxosaurus, right? And so one thing to point out, there's a lot of scratches and marks here, just to give like that damage. And I would say that I'm not sure about this particular animal, but we do see nature animals with scars and things that have healed, survival things. As far as the environment goes, it would have lived actually in the same time frame as Elastosaurus. So I brought my Safari 1990 Elastosaurus, my Tylosaurus from 2008 Safari, and so these guys are some of its contemporaries. Now on land you'd have like Chasmosaurus and Daspletosaurus and Gorgosaurus. Actually for you looking this way, imagine you were looking north, and this is North America, here's the east coast, here's the west coast, and on this coast, the Laramidia, well actually not coast, it's actually its own continent because the ocean's risen. Laramidia has Albertosaurus and Daspletosaurus and Gorgosaurus and Chasmosaurus, all those not T-Rex older relatives. And on this side, we have actually very few fossils known on the northeastern side. Appalachiosaurus, Tyrannosaurus, and Dryptosaurus, actually. I did a video on that a long time ago. Anyway, so these guys are in the middle, swimming above Kansas and Austin and San Antonio, basically. And so the idea is that I always tell people, they're like, are there dinosaurs in Texas? Well, we have Big Bend, we have some North Texas footprints. But if you were where I'm living in Houston, the Houston area, if we were in Cretaceous period, we would look up and it'd be like almost a few meters of a lot of meters of water. And so that's why we find all these seashells, particularly where I live and where I do field trips in Austin, San Antonio, a lot of seashell fossils. Speaking of which, it is believed this guy would have eaten fish, squid. This is a belemnite. This is not the scale, obviously. Belemnites are a type of squid, like relative, but where ammonites have hard shells, they have an internal structure right there, where modern squids have more keratin, kind of like cartilage, more like keratin build for structure. These guys have little bullet-shaped structures inside there for support. So belemnites are found in the same area as far as ammonites and nautiloids. So these things are they're all called mollusca, particularly cephalopoda. Mollusca is a phylum because they're all animals, kingdom animal. Phylum is mollusca, which includes snails and clams in these guys, octopus and squid. But then cephalopod, meaning head foot, there's a head in the foot, the head. Well, for ancient Greek, you would see an octopus, and you would see just a head with feet on it. And you're like, it's cephalopod. But actually, the organs are like in the head's right here, and the organs are like up here. So I always tell kids, it's like if your torso was over your head, and your arms and legs come out of your chin, kind of thing. That's how these guys work. And they would have been probably on the food source of this guy. And you're eating these things, and the teeth are very sharp because why? They're trying to grab, not the scale, trying to grab this and then swallow it whole because they can't eat large prey. They're, the neck's like that big. When you add the vertebra and then the throat and everything. So they can't eat large prey. And so their cousins, the pliosaurs, did that. And so the idea is that they're eating this slippery fast food, they're swallowing whole, and so on and so forth. So that's Styxosaurus in a nutshell. Like I said, I saw it in Target a while ago. I knew it was a genus when I saw it, but I saw that it was a Plesiosaurus remake, and I was like, I can just wait for that. And I found it again 6 months later in a discount store. So that's the trick. That's the secret of my collection. Two things. One, gifts. People give me a lot of free stuff. I appreciate that greatly. As I mentioned their names many times. And then two, I appreciate that I just wait to see if it gets cheaper sometimes. Usually when I do a Jurassic World video like this, I will buy the toy when it first comes out. But just to get the earliest video on it as possible. But if I wanted multiples of it for a herd, I wait. Or two, like this, I was like, I can just wait for that. And here we are. See how that works. Anyway, I will see you next week. We're doing a pterosaur from Australia. Something different, I guess. I don't know. I feel like I'm a show building this, but it's not. It's just me saying we're doing this next. Anyway, thank you for tuning in.